Hey guys, it's Norm from Tested. I'm here at Comic-Con 2012. There are plenty of booths here, but one of the booths we always have to stop by, and one that Adam stops by every year, is Prop Store of London. I'm here with Stephen Lane, the CEO of Prop Store of London. How are you doing?
Very good, man. Very good. Thanks for stopping by.
Of course, and you guys, your booth is different every year because you have different movie props that come in. What does Prop Store of London do? You guys just sell props, buy props?
Yeah. Ultimately, we're here to try and track down some of the most exciting stuff that's been used in film productions around the world. Once we acquire that material, then it's just a decision-making process whether we try and lock it down and hold it for our company collection and archive, which we then bring out to museums and exhibitions and events just like this. And then some of the other material that we find, we offer out to collectors who are trying to track down their holy grails as well.
So it's the best job in the world because you can be a collector yourself and you basically run the company. The whole business is collecting awesome movie props.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I came into this as a collector. That's where this company was founded from. I've been collecting for over 20 years now, and so it was a passion and a hobby that just went ultimately madly out of control. And that was enabled by the internet. When the internet came around, we were able to reach out to collectors around the world because we work with a sort of global niche market where there's collectors in Japan who want Batman stuff, collectors in London who want Superman stuff, and there's no other way to get to those people other than the internet.
So how do you come into possession of these props? Are they just auctions from the studios after production ends, or what happens?
Sure, I can tell you, but I'd have to kill you, and that'll be it, man. No, I mean, we really hunt down this stuff from any aspect. Anybody who's worked within the film industry, production companies, distributors, rental houses, sculptors, artists. If you go back sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago, nobody really cared about this stuff as much as they do now. And so a lot of this stuff was just thrown away. It was trashed. You know, nobody wanted to save it. The product for the production company or the distributor was in the can. That's the picture. That's what they wanted. And so this was just like a byproduct, you know, and it was something that nobody really knew what to do with. And pieces like this spacesuit just ended up just being handed away, you know, just not really looked after.
Oh my God, that's crazy. So let's talk about the spacesuit. Last year you guys had the Zorg ZF-1, which was the first time any prop fan of the Fifth Element saw it in public, including Adam. And this year, something almost as exclusive, Kane's spacesuit from Alien. So let's take a look at this. So how did you guys get in possession of this?
This is a piece that was actually with a private collector for a number of years, and I knew that he had it, and he was a very, very passionate Alien fan, and he had hounded crew members for years. He had tried to find old documents and paperwork which had people's names or telephone numbers on them, because a lot of guys who work on the films aren't necessarily credited in the way that they are now on IMDb, for example. Back then you might just get the heads of department who are credited and things like that. So he went through this whole process of scouring the world to find out who worked on what they did, and did they have any little trinkets or mementos left over. And so he pieced together over a number of years, this guy did the hard work. Over a number of years he found the guy who had the gloves, he found the guy who had the helmet, the guy who had the boots, and he put it all together. And I basically hounded him and sort of kept pestering him and phoning him regularly and saying, come on man, you don't need to keep that suit anymore, you don't need to. And he just had a change in circumstances and decided he wanted to sort of liquidize his investment, if you like, in the suit. And I was there ready and waiting with my checkbook. I was like, done, thank you very much, yep.
Persistence and good timing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about verification? How like when you come into possession of a prop, how do you make sure that is, the model that was used on screen? Like, are there historians? Who are the experts that you go to verify this stuff?
A lot of it is based upon our own research and then us reaching out to the people who are involved with the production. So, for example, I talked to John Mollo, who was the designer on this particular suit, and we'll look, and one of the things that we also do, as well as collecting the physical assets, is accruing a database of behind-the-scenes images. So when we talk to crew and personnel, we're going to be asking, have you got any props? Have you got any costumes? Then have you got any ephemera, scripts, call sheets? Might give us leads for other assets. But also, did you take any photos? Have you got any behind-the-scenes reference photography? And again, back then, people could do it. They're not great photos, they're not digital quality often, but what they do give us is alternative angles from behind the camera, from away from the camera shot, so stuff that you don't see on screen. So we go through this whole process of looking at all the documentation, the reference material we have to hand. We spend a lot of time looking at the film, even just looking at the film in Blu-ray these days, because the technology is available. You can look at the thread patterns, you can look at the weave patterns on materials, you can look at the paint work and actually match up greeblies and little elements of that. And so it's not just sort of of one aspect that we'll go to. We'll look at our reference, we'll look at the behind-the-scenes reference, we'll talk to the guys that we know who worked on the films, and ultimately spend a lot of time looking at the film itself as well.
Tell me something interesting about this spacesuit now that you're an expert on it, you've done all the research.
Oh, I just think everything about this suit I love. You know, I'd like, with Prometheus that's just come out now, I know that there are sort of little hints of this in there. I'd love to have seen them use a lot more of this. You know, I love the whole samurai sort of armor element to it. You've got sort of like a Jules Verne diving suit aspect to it with a big spotlight over the top of it as well. I think, you know, you've got a little bit of British cricket pad armor, if you like, down here as well. But I just think ultimately the way the whole suit comes together with this sort of very retro, very clunky, very dirty, gritty look to it just works so beautifully. Absolutely brilliant.
And this is something for the permanent collection for Prop Store of London? You don't see yourself parting with this anytime soon?
No, Adam, you can't have it. I think that it's something that as I said, I was chasing for a long time. It's something that I really love having. It's the first time we've actually got it out into the general public, even though I've owned it for a number of years. And I think it's most unlikely that I'd ever want to sell it.
Awesome. Well, you do have other things here at your booth. Let's take a look at some other props from movies that you have this year. All right, Steven, so what do we have here?
Well, I think a lot of movie fans are going to recognize this piece. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger's Atlantean sword from Conan the Barbarian. This is Conan's sword. This piece is, again, a real favorite of mine, and one of the first times we brought it out on public display. I just love this piece.
So is this the hero model for the close-up shots? Is it a stunt prop? I mean, they made many for the movie, right?
Sure, we believe that they made somewhere in the region of 3 or 4 hero props, which was a fully cast metal piece. What we actually have here is the special effects sword. It was designed by Ron Cobb and made and crafted by hand by Nicky Alder, who was the visual effects special effects supervisor on the film. This is actually a rolled steel that's been hand beaten into shape, and this is actually designed as a retract. So this is designed for stabbing somebody. So basically, as Arnie spins around, cuts somebody's head off, and then they cut to the next shot where he guts somebody, this is the sword that they're going to be using for that. So you have a metal blade that follows all the way down here to the hilt, and then at this point it's actually covered in a resin and plastic material, so it allows us to get the engraving in, and then a resin handle, resin fiberglass with this binding that's on here as well, this sort of string binding that's here.
Do you find a lot of people replicating this sword in like the replica prop forum? It seems like something that someone with resin can make themselves too.
Sure. I think there was a company called Albion who went and researched this to the nth degree, and they managed to find a lot of Jodie Sampson's original artworks in it and Ron Cobb's artworks and a lot of behind-the-scenes photos. And I believe that they got a master to work from, and they actually cast a hero version. So they've created a hero replica version, and the hero version would weigh probably about 9 pounds. I mean, that's a heavy sword. This is probably about 3 or 4 pounds, something like that, due to the difference in construction.
It's not the same sword that Arnold had in his office at the governor's office, right? Because he had one of the Conan swords in his office.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm not exactly sure what that sword is that he's got, but I'm sure it's probably one of the hero versions.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Let's move on to the next thing. All right, Steven, one last thing. We got to go back to the Fifth Element, because that's what last year the big deal was. And you have something different this year. It's the Mangalore heads from the Fifth Element. You got 2 of them here. Explain them to me.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So what we basically have here is the reveal of what is underneath the Mangalore mask, the hero close-up Mangalore masks, and then one of the stunt Mangalore masks as you see them in the background. This is a foam latex appliance that the guys are going to just pull over their head, and when they're running around, they're doing the stunts, whatever action they're involved with, not seen close up in camera, these are the guys that are going to be there.
Yeah, it flops around. It's the ears flop around, and they look like grunts and stuff.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But then when we're coming up on tight on any of the Mangalores, we've got to have so much more detail. And this is actually what remains of one of the hero close-up Mangalores. Now, the stunt guys, they're a foam latex, which gives a reasonably good paint finish on it, but the silicone gives that depth to it that gives it a real sort of organic feel. And so the problem with some of the silicones that are used during production process is that they have to plasticize them, which means it makes them more malleable. So you get all this movement and that looks very organic. And unfortunately, that material at times does have a tendency to break down. So what's happened is the silicone skin on this is now rotted away. But rather than this just being a sort of a waste or a byproduct or something that should be just stripped down, what we wanted to do was retain this exactly as it stands, just to show the craftsmanship that Nick Dudman and his team, the Creature Crew, put into this to actually building this hero piece. So this is a worn mask. There would be an actor underneath here. So this is like a bust of one of the actors, and this is actually a worn mask that would be fully remote control. Through all of these cables that come down here, this basically pulls down here, down the back to the backpack for the Mangalores, and that's where all the drivers were for all the servos that were inside it. And those cables will then pull this, and you have the paddles, so you get all the movement within underneath the head, and even these little balloons here are air bladders, so you get the muscle movement as well. So literally airlines would be blowing in and out of there, so that you get a sort of pulsation as you need it as well.
Incredibly difficult to orchestrate all that just for one head, right?
Oh yeah, there would be multiple controllers for that. So you'd have the guy inside would probably have an element of control. There's a little bar inside here which just goes below the actor's jaw. So when he opens his mouth, that's going to assist with the opening of the mouth. But then you have movement and paddles here for all around, which would be snarling of the lips, gnashing of the teeth, if you like.
And something for creature animation just doesn't exist today, because this could be done with CG and we wouldn't have the animatronics and the masks today.
Yes and no. I mean, there are guys out there who still definitely champion the cause of physical effects. You look at people like Guillermo del Toro, Peter Jackson. Sure, they know how CG can be used, but also I think there's still a relevance and importance to use physical effects like this because it works so well.
Yeah.
Really, you even look at Prometheus that's just come out. Those guys, those engineers, they build them. That's guys in makeup.
Yeah.
And look how fantastic that looked. Mm-hmm. And probably if you look at the cost of what it was to put that guy in a suit as opposed to digitally putting him into the film for the whole film, it still makes sense.
Yeah,
so
it's comparable and looks better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there are always going to be people out there who are going to want to go with the new technology because that's what they're learning, that's what they're growing up with. But at the same time, there really is a place for this, and people should still continue to use this as much as possible, because then we can collect the stuff too, of course.
And that's awesome from a prop collector standpoint, not just the aesthetics, but the functional prop behind the design of the prop here.
Oh yeah, the work these guys put into it, that can't be appreciated. If you're just looking at the skin, you just think it's a rubber mask. Once you get inside this thing and see what these guys, how many man-hours have gone into the R&D of that, the design and the build of that, it's just incredible.
So, Prop Store of London, do you guys actually have a museum where these are on display, or is it all stored in a warehouse? How is this appreciated by your company?
We have two facilities. We've got one just outside London and one in Chatsworth in Los Angeles. At both facilities, they are working offices and working warehouses, but we have galleries in both. So people can come and have a look around. We have a lot of our company collection material on display. If somebody wants to look at something particularly that's shown on our website, we can get it out to show them. And we're very keen to entice people to come and have a look at this stuff in person. And it's why we do shows like this, because no matter how well we photograph it on our website, how good we get it looking, you can't appreciate this stuff until you come and see it in person fully.
I got to ask, what is your favorite piece of your collection at Prop Store of London?
That's a difficult question.
Is it something you can even talk about?
No. I'm very heavily into Alien. I'm very heavily into the Star Wars films. The John Hurt suit that we looked at earlier, I've had for a number of years. The Conan sword I've owned for probably over 12 years now. But Star Wars is probably going to be the key for me. I own a number of original helmets that were worn in the film. TIE Fighter, Biker Scout, I've got a C-3PO head with the light-up eyes, and then I've got a number of model miniatures from the original Star Wars films as well. I've got a Y-Wing and an X-Wing and a TIE Interceptor and things like that. So, that sort of stuff for me is, because I was 7 years old, I managed to get to the premiere with my dad, that thing coming in over the top and everything else, that's the thing that impacted me like so many guys my age.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. We got a fun excuse to visit your man cave, because we hang out in Adam's man cave all the time. We got to check out yours. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ken, and have a great show.
Thanks, man.